The difference of running on data versus just having data or using data is if you're leveraging data in your like everyday activities, like it's pushing you forward, it's very different than having a monthly report of what happened. Like if I'm just going through the motions and spending hours generating a report to send to my CMO at the end of the month about what happened, that's one thing. But if I'm actually using data to like iterate the process as it goes, generate new ideas based off of what we've seen working, use data to have directional insights rather than just reports, it really changes the culture of my organization because I'm proactive. I think if you wait until the end of the month to review your reports historically and then you adjust for the following month, you're like way behind.
Right.
This is somebody who's adapting like daily to get better.
You're listening to RevOps Champions, a podcast created for B2B leaders to help you align your people, streamline your processes, trust your data, and leverage technology in order to grow your business. I'm joined by Lauren Ryan, Senior Corporate Solutions Engineer, CRM competitive expert at HubSpot. Prior to joining HubSpot, Lauren was the founder of Coastal Consulting, where she quickly became known for her expertise in integrating HubSpot and Salesforce for optimal performance. At HubSpot, she helps organizations tackle complex CRM challenges with confidence. She brings a unique perspective on how teams can successfully leverage enterprise-grade tools while scaling with clarity and alignment, which I love. Lauren, welcome to the RevOps Champions podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I'm going to dive right in, Lauren, because we've known each other for a few years from when you were a partner, and it's so awesome to see you using all your incredible experience and expertise now at HubSpot. You've described your mission in some cases as demystifying the HubSpot-Salesforce integration, which is kind of how we got to know you in this ecosystem. What inspired that mission, and how, why did it matter so much for the teams trying to figure it out?
I started my career in trade show management, and my role on the marketing team was figuring out which shows we went to, getting our sales team aligned and on site, doing the lead generation up towards it on site and follow up afterwards. And we had integrated HubSpot and Salesforce, and that was in like 2015, maybe 2014. So very early stages of HubSpot becoming more of a CRM focused platform. And I found there was a huge disconnect between sales and marketing. And my role was really to advocate for sales at trade shows, but also achieve marketing's goals. And I found that there was like intense misalignment between the two. And I traced that back throughout the years to a systems misalignment of like, if we're not communicating well with our systems, we can't communicate well as an organization. And throughout my career, from logistics marketing to startup marketing to financial services marketing, I saw a pretty consistent trend in HubSpot and Salesforce being the system of record for marketing and sales. And so I had this theory that if I could make those tools work well together, I could make the teams work well together. And I saw that to be true in the organizations where I implemented the tools and helped teams use them. And in addition to my regular job, I started freelancing probably in 2016, right after I got my master's, to really start building my skill set outside of just my regular company, because I wanted exposure to more and more companies to test this theory, and consistently saw it reign true. Whenever your systems are connected and your teams are like on the same page, technology-wise, it reflects in the results of the business. And I love to say that people who use HubSpot and like to talk about HubSpot, it's really in the end user experience and the results it's driving for the business. And I came to HubSpot because I truly believe HubSpot improves people's quality of life. I do think that having a better tool and better experience at work gives you a better life. And so I feel kind of evangelical when I talk about HubSpot sometimes, and that I'm really passionate about the impact it can have for people. And so I have always been a HubSpot fan. I started my career as a marketer, but I got into the technology space because I wanted it to connect well with Salesforce. And I've used both for over a decade and figured out so much on the front lines of how it works, and saw there wasn't really that documentation in the space. So I narrowed in on creating that documentation, being the teacher that I wanted whenever I started using this integration. And once I felt like I had created enough on that mission and helped, I think, over 60 companies over this period of 4 years, this opportunity opened with HubSpot, and I decided to move from partner to in-house.
Yeah, very cool. Well, we're so happy to have you at HubSpot, because I think you're essentially extending on all the experience that you have and just creating potentially even more value than you were already when you were on the partner side.
I hope so.
Yes, yes. So, Lauren, so you talked about the importance of the alignment between the systems that marketing and sales use. Um, in our experience, when companies come to us, whichever way they found us, they're typically thinking that we're going to be solving a technology implementation integration type solution. What they're often not expecting, and this is even for some of the larger implementations we've done for companies that have 500, 1,000 or more employees, they're not realizing that in order to implement the CRM successfully and integrate it with whatever tools they're using, we have to go back to the alignment of their people, the alignment of their processes and their data. And of course, they very quickly figure out why, because that's what we're implementing the technology to make all those things work better and faster. So it was interesting when you were saying that saw the importance of the alignment of the technology, but would you agree that it's really hard for that to be successful if the people and the processes, taking your examples of sales and marketing, if the people and the processes aren't aligned, it's going to be really hard for the technology to be aligned.
For sure. I think that revenue operations as a specialty was formed because the more people did CRM implementations, the more apparent it became that your CRM was your business strategy. And that in order to properly implement your technology, you had to have a cohesive strategy. And the people who became your implementers became the ones who are most in touch with how your business actually operated, because there's the executive declaration of what we're going to do, and there's the real life lived experience of what your end users are actually doing, and there's all the pieces in between of like who owns where the data is coming from, who's administrating, who's actually using this, what message is actually ending up in the customer's inbox or on the phone with them. And all of that is very disconnected, or it used to be
Right.
before CRMs were implemented and rolled out in companies that maybe didn't have a CRM before, or they had a homegrown CRM that was like forced to fit around their broken processes.
Right.
And so implementers became consultants of your organization in order to then get your technology rolled out. And so where people fail at implementations of HubSpot and other technology is whenever they decide to forego that people development piece and like the interviewing, the research, the end user acceptance testing, when they say like, no, we just need to turn on the tool and start using it. And while you can do that, it's really missing the piece that's going to actually drive adoption, which is understanding what your customers need, what your people need, and tying that together towards your business goals.
Right. Yeah, which kind of comes back to what you were saying at the very beginning. We often talk about it. This typically not why companies are wanting to implement a CRM, but I always talk about how one of the values is actually employee experience. One of the hidden values, and potentially one of the biggest values today, of an easy to use, powerful CRM. And I often give the analogy of like the Sunday barbecue when people are catching up with friends, how things at work, and they start talking about what friction they're experiencing, and it's often the tools that they're using. They haven't been given the tools to successfully do their jobs, which I totally agree with you, as any technology, and which is why, of course, we are such big fans of HubSpot, that makes it easier, people's lives easier, and their work has to be one of the biggest values. And of course, it also means that adoption is far more likely, and adoption, of course, is what leads to a successful use of technology.
Yeah, one of our sales leaders has a great story, and we've done research, and HubSpot's adoption rate is about 30% higher than industry average, which is around 50, and we sit more in the high 80s around adoption when people are actually using HubSpot. And one of our sales leaders tells a story that I love. She used to be a leader of sales at LinkedIn, and they used a different enterprise grade CRM competitor, and she was recruiting for sales leadership role underneath her, and she had a candidate she loved, and she called them with an offer, and they basically said, awesome, like what are the enablement tools, what's the tech stack you have? And whenever she shared what their tech stack, he essentially declined the offer. And she asked, like, why would you decline the offer? This is a great offer, it's what you wanted. And he said he doesn't work at companies that don't use HubSpot. And that was her first introduction to HubSpot. It was the first time she heard about it. She's like, what are you talking about? And so he said that he knew as a leading sales rep that his toolkit was the biggest way that he won. And he had found that he sells best when he sells with HubSpot. And so that led her on her journey to eventually be a leader in our company, because she did her research on HubSpot, found it to be true, talked to people in the market. And now she's a sales leader at HubSpot because she really became a believer in the product. And And she speaks about how if you want your team to grow, like you need to give them the tools to do that. She aligned with HubSpot because as a salesperson herself, she saw the value in running on HubSpot. I think that's a really compelling story.
Yeah, I love that story. The fact that you're hiring a highly valuable salesperson, the fact that they actually made the decision based on the tools that they'd be using. I mean, salespeople want to maximize how much they're able to earn, and they know that if they have tools that create friction in how many customers they can help, then that's a problem.
I do too. It's really stuck with me.
Yes, yeah. So you touched, a little bit on how your expertise and experience has sort of led you to HubSpot and in the role that you are now. So looking back over the last few years, how relevant is that expertise exactly in your role today? And what else has it opened the door for you for increasing the value that you bring to complex CRM?
Yeah. I think that I have made it very valuable in my role today. So I have an entrepreneurial background and I joke with my boss that I'm kind of an entrepreneur here at HubSpot and I'm trying to figure out how I can best leverage my skills for the benefit of the company. So at the base level, my job is to help demonstrate HubSpot to new potential customers and show how HubSpot can meet their business case. And what I'm also doing is aligning on our competitive deals in the enterprise CRM space to bring my lived experience to the deal. So essentially saying, hey, I implemented Salesforce, I've implemented HubSpot for years in a variety of different industries. Here's what I've experienced and here's how people enjoy either one. My favorite story to tell is how, which is much less sophisticated than what I shared before, is that when I talk in the community and when you see people talk online, when you do references, people that are very proud to be Salesforce customers are proud of what they've built on Salesforce. They're proud of the white labeled app that they have, of the complexity of their Apex code, of the sophistication of their flows. People that really chatter in the HubSpot community are excited about the time it saves them, the results they've driven for their business, the end user experience, the adoption rate. And so the reason that when I'm certified in both, deeply, extensively experienced in both tools, and the reason
Right.
that when I decided to sell my agency and go work at HubSpot or Salesforce, I kind of worked at either. And I chose HubSpot because I'm very much aligned with the results focused mission. I've built
Yeah.
really cool things in Salesforce I'm proud of too. I'm proud of being a Salesforce admin. I love the status of being able to do that, of being a Sales Cloud consultant, certified. All of
Right.
that means a lot, and I'm proud of that for my career. But when it comes to the results and the technology I want to put in businesses, like I'm very aligned with HubSpot because I'm a people first leader, is the way that I've always presented myself to the market. And I think HubSpot is a people first platform.
Mhm.
And I love being a part of helping teams understand how much easier their future could be
Right.
on HubSpot. And so I think the way that I really drive value in my role today from my experience is one, being a operator in my previous life, two, being deeply certified and experienced in a hands-on way in both tools, and three, I do a lot of internal enablement on the integration, on upping our materials, on helping our CS team understand more about that integration and just helping internally. Um, and taking that content creation I used to do externally and doing it more internal. And so, yeah, I've just been trying to bring my experience and help as many people as possible internally as well.
Yeah, your sort of roots in marketing, you're using those marketing roots of yours now. Again, as HubSpot grows as a platform and as a solution, there needs to be sort of internal education as well about what's possible. And I think the perspective that you bring is really quite incredible. So, Lauren, let's just go back in time a little bit. The potential pitfalls of implementing technology and the road that business leaders need to navigate. But do you have a personal story of, a tech buying decision that you've made that maybe didn't turn out exactly as you expected, and then maybe what you learned from that?
Yeah. Not to name names, but whenever I worked in financial services, it was prior to HubSpot becoming SOC 2 compliant, which we are now. And there's droves of banks
Yes.
and credit unions coming to HubSpot, which I love.
Yeah.
But back before I worked at a credit union and I had to implement an enterprise solution that was not HubSpot to integrate with Financial Services Cloud. And it wasn't a buying decision I made happily because I knew the power of HubSpot and I knew where I wanted to be aligned in the market. But it's one I had to make from a compliance perspective. And I'm sure plenty of people can relate to having to make that decision when it
Hmm.
comes to a high compliance industry. And I really regretted the buying decision because we had to go with Salesforce Marketing Cloud, which in its own right is a very powerful tool. But it took me about 8 months to be able to implement that, integrate it with our tools, and deploy an email. Reasons being the email wasn't out of the box mobile responsive, so we had to bring in a developer to do AMP script, HTML, etc. I had to learn how to write SQL in order to be able to build segments of contacts to send an email to begin with.
Mhm.
We had to integrate with Salesforce, which was a separate integration because it's still built on Exact Target. So all around, it was just a really tough implementation. And that was for someone who had already had 6 years of marketing automation experience at that point,
Mhm.
and a lot of Salesforce experience as well. And that I really regretted having to move in that direction because of how ineffective it made me. Like I was really excited about the role and all of these like next best action campaigns I was going to do and all of these things. And I ended up leaving the company because of the software we chose,
Mhm.
because I had to build a skill set that was different than the one I came in with it in order to actually use the tool. And so we didn't really get to the point where we got to use my marketing capabilities and that skill set I had because I was too busy trying to figure out the technology.
Mhm.
And that's really what I'm trying to help people avoid now is to be able to actually do the things you're good at. Like focus on sales. Don't be like bogged down in your CRM. Focus on marketing. Don't spend all of that time trying to figure out how to use a marketing tool. Focus on like administration in a strategic way, like growing your team, implementing new ideas rather than figuring all your time like editing a Salesforce formula. And so that's really where I've seen it play out is like it's not just like one tool versus another, it's the opportunity cost of
Yeah.
like, yeah, we had Marketing Cloud implemented and we were able to do some things with it, but it took us so long to do it that like, was it worth it? And that's where like I've always answered no, I don't think it was. And that's really where I've focused in marketing is making sure that you're using a tool that you can actually leverage. So that was
Right.
my biggest buying decision regret. I would say in a less industry specific example, I changed project management software a lot as an agency owner. And I feel like every time I got one, I regretted it a few months in. I felt like it was just so challenging to find one that can track agency tasks by project, also track time, billable hours. I never really found one that worked well for that. So,
Yeah. You're choosing between something that's easier to use but not quite as robust, or something that's a little more complex, which then
mhm.
leads to complexity, and you don't necessarily get what you need. I want to just sort of zoom out a little bit. You mentioned the strategic administration, but I want to go up a level higher with all the amazing things that are happening with AI now, which is business leaders are often solving for the wrong thing, right? We tend to get caught up on, we need to get the technology, and the technology is going to solve all our problems, but we know that that's not the case. And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where you have to have the people aligned, and in order to do that, you also have to have your processes aligned so that everybody knows what they need to do. And one of the things that I keep thinking about now is just the need for strategic leadership when it comes to investing, choosing, then investing in the training and the adoption of these tools, and how they're tied to the higher business goals. What advice do you have for people who have made a decision like that, or in the process of making a decision where they might not be thinking strategically enough?
I think it's important to get everyone who could be impacted in the room. I think often when it comes to these decisions, and I see this a lot in the HubSpot buying process, is you start off with a marketer or a VP of sales who's really interested in change, but doesn't run that up high enough. And
Mm,
so like for a credit union, I think is a good example right now is HubSpot can be used not only for marketing your credit union, but your tellers can also log into HubSpot and leverage it on top of your core and your FinServ, like all of these tools you use.
mm,
Your tellers at the front of the bank can log in when they walk in to do a deposit or whatever and run this through HubSpot and actually have it connect to all of this data. So when they walk in, you can easily see, oh, they're like really highly ranked for a home loan. Like, why don't I start talking to them about that and then get an internal referral that puts more money in your teller's pockets, gets more leads for your loan servicing team, and a
mhm,
better customer experience for your members or your customers because you're enabling your team to give them a better experience. And I talk to financial services teams that are still having their like frontline bank log into their core, and that's their only insight they have into their members or their customers. And it's like there's so much more today that you can be offering with tools like HubSpot that aggregate and surface that data for you. And
mm,
so like let's say a loan servicing team comes to us from a credit union to talk about just fulfilling loans or like managing that deal process through HubSpot. It's like we should be talking to like your CEO or your chief experience officer because you can actually put loan servicing, marketing, frontline customer service, all in HubSpot, where you still have these core systems. We're not replacing your core financial services tools, but we're surfacing and aggregating that data where you can actually act on it in a meaningful way. And I think that something that's been the most fun part of my job is seeing those dots connect for our customers of like, we can really create this like amazing experience and like beat out the competition for these growth goals by just simply surfacing the data we have. And
Mhm.
I think that whenever you're looking at new software, everyone is just in tuned to look at our own needs and like what we need first. And I think that you can really grow in your organization by challenging yourself to think about everything from a strategic leadership position of like, if I
Mhm.
was our CEO, like I think about that here in my role. Like if I was Yamini, what would I want to do in this position? Like what decision would I want me to make?
Mhm.
And I think if you look at your role and your purpose in an organization from that lens, it can help you make bigger decisions, greater decisions, be involved in more conversations because you put yourself there. And so if you're a marketing analyst thinking, okay, marketing studio that came out at Inbound was incredible, I think that we could really save time. Zoom out and think about what would sell your boss on the idea. What would make HubSpot more valuable for your boss and then her boss and then like her lateral people. Start to
Yeah.
think about the impact it can make for your company and try to make all your decisions on software from that lens. Because whenever we have this view of, okay, I need to send marketing emails or I need to send an automated sales sequence, that's when we end up with a really fragmented tech stack where you're integrating different tools. You've got data siloed in different places. And whenever you actually look at your organization and how it benefits from software, you end up with a tool like HubSpot that's a full customer platform
Mhm.
rather than a series of solutions that are bolted together. Because HubSpot allows all your data to live in one place, all your teams to work from one tool, and it looks at connecting your organization from a strategic level, not whatever each individual department needs to accomplish on different tools.
Yeah, a lot of that I think probably comes from the leaders, whether it's a bank or a credit union or any kind of business that's in a more traditional industry, or that's been around for a long time. 30 years ago, the only options they had were siloed tools, right? So you use this for marketing and you use this playbook for sales and you use this for customer service or whatever. Not to mention all the other ways cross-functionally integrate your systems and your processes to drive overall customer value over time. And I'm guessing the metric LTV probably wasn't even used much back then. So I think a lot of that is generational, but I think that's a really good call out and a good reminder that you talked about 2015, which was when we started moving from providing marketing automation and marketing services to a functional solution to ultimately doing implementations of what we then called the full stack of HubSpot for marketing, sales, and customer service, and then integrating it. Um, Business is no longer cross-functional. It's now an entire matrix, and it happens in three dimensions. And I think AI is just going to make that even more real, because now it goes into, on the show we talk about the four pillars of RevOps from our perspective, which are people, process, data, and technology. That is going to enable us to incorporate it into all the technology that we're able to use in a matrix fashion, where the example that you gave, a teller at a bank or a credit union can now impact what the CFO is doing or the CEO is doing to grow lifetime value of that particular member or customer. I mean, the future is super exciting from that perspective. But again, it goes back to the strategic leadership aspect, right?
For sure. Something that I've seen in the market over the years is, I mean, Salesforce has been around for a long time and it's for a long time been seen as the safe decision. And what I have seen in recent years is Salesforce is no longer the safe decision because buying that software and implementing it poorly and not having a team to manage it well actually puts you at risk for being the person that chose to bring Salesforce on. I
Right.
have seen a lot of people in recent years who were in charge of owning Salesforce, and the success metrics that Salesforce like was in charge of generating no longer be with their companies. And something that I have seen people or heard people say is I don't want to make the wrong decision for my company. I don't want to be the person who chose the wrong tool. And what
Right.
I have seen throughout my experience implementing is I have seen people get promoted and grow and companies be acquired because of the success they've proven through using a tool like HubSpot. And when we
Mm.
think about like the strategic and the growth that, like, when we think about ourselves in these decisions, like, you really are seen as an innovator now bringing on HubSpot because we're leading an AI application. Like, we're not advertising laying off half of our workforce because we're using AI. We're talking about how AI is accelerating our growth. Like, we're growing exponentially at HubSpot, and that's largely because of the way that we're able to apply AI internally and for our customers.
Uh-huh.
And I think if you look at the efficiencies that can be gained from AI organizationally and how it can really just exponentially increase the amount that your team's able to do with the time that they have, rather than how many people can we get rid of because of AI. I mean, the
Right.
goal of AI is to help you grow. So you don't need to get rid of people. You just need your people to be able to do more without like killing themselves with work.
Sure.
And that's really how AI that's peppered throughout HubSpot. I mean, really, AI is built into everything you do. If you click create property in HubSpot now, it asks for a prompt, not for you to type stuff in as far as configuring it. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. Very powerful.
But it's removing friction at every point of the process. And that's really how I love how HubSpot has applied AI versus some other enterprise tools where you have to actually configure the bots and like build the AI logic yourself. I love that HubSpot has figured out those key points where it adds value and removes friction and built it for you.
Uh-huh.
So it's really ready to use day one. And I think it's just so cool to see how it's been evolving recently.
Right, right. So, Lauren, as we were, talking about the example of a frontline customer, and if they were given access to these fully integrated tools and data, which is what I wanted to get to next. That's really what we're doing. Is that we're giving anybody who can impact the experience and the value to a customer. If we're giving them the tools to do that, then it will drive value and it will drive growth for all stakeholders, whether it's the teller, the customer, the CXO, the CEO, the board, whatever. The value increases for everybody. But there's a flow of data that we're essentially getting to. I know you are talking about every day, and we're talking about every day with the demand for how AI is going to be built into our businesses, into our CRM, whether it's HubSpot or something else, and all the other technology. To your point, HubSpot's making it very easy for us by being so proactive about investing in AI ahead of everybody else. But it's still adding complexity to the decisions that business leaders need to make. So what they go back to, of course, is looking at the data. The data often is not very accessible or easy to use or clear. So we're working really, really hard now to help HubSpot customers make sure that their data is organized in such a way that it's usable, because AI is going to be really hard to use the benefits of AI if
Hmm.
the data is not, clean, accessible, and in real time. So how do you think about your, data? What separates companies that use data from those that just run on data?
There were a few years ago, whenever they started doing all the Google Ads stuff, we talked about how first party data was going to become behind your people the most valuable resource any company had. And I think
Right.
now that we're in this AI like generation, I mean, AI is only as strong as the context it has. And so if we think about, like we've talked about HubSpot, our data is unified in one place. Our AI is really powerful because of its availability of data. And I think the difference of running on data versus just having data or using data is if you're leveraging data in your like everyday activities, like it's pushing you forward, it's very different than having a monthly report of what happened. Like if I'm just going through the motions and spending hours generating a report to send to my CMO at the end of the month about what happened, that's one thing. But if I'm actually using data to like iterate the process as it goes, generate new ideas based off of what we've seen working, use data to have directional insights rather than just reports, it really changes the culture of my organization because I'm I'm proactive. I think if you wait until the end of the month to review your reports historically and then you adjust for the following month, you're like way behind
Right.
to somebody who's adapting like daily to get better.
Yeah.
We're leveraging technology to even do that for them. Whenever you hop into HubSpot now, if you open up a contact, you can use Breeze Assistant and just say, hey, tell me about this contact, and it'll summarize the whole history of your relationship in seconds.
Hmm.
And to me, that's using data instead of just having data where, like, if I know specifically to look at a property or check what the value is there, I'll get that information. But if you're running on data, you have tools that surface it right away. So I can just see everything that's of importance without having to remember as a rep, okay, I need to look here for this. I need to open up this related object to get this information. Like if I'm running on data, like it's at my fingertips and I can use it to advance my conversation instead of having to spend a long time to go find it. Like I was talking to a company recently that does field sales. So they walk in and they sell into a customer, like they're a real retailer. So that retailer sells on their behalf. So if I'm
Hmm.
going to go meet with them on site, I need to know the amount I've sold into them and the amount of sell through in the past year. And I need those like stats easily. So before they moved to HubSpot, they were opening two different tools to get that data, sell in, sell through, and then their database to get the information about the customer, and their sent inbox to see what they've sent them recently. And so when I showed them in HubSpot, they could see all their sent emails, their sell through percent, all of this in one screen, like without clicking anything when they just opened a customer. It was literally like a jaw dropping moment for their team of like, we don't need these systems. Like I can actually just enable my team to move forward by giving them the data they need, like with no effort.
Right.
And I think companies that are understanding that surfacing data and bringing it where it needs to be for the right people at the right time is completely changing the structure of how they work, operate, perform.
Right.
And people who are leaning into the power of that is really who's running on data versus just has data.
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
been so cool to see.
Yeah. As you were saying that, I was realizing that's very tightly connected to what we were talking about earlier about giving people the tools that they need to do their job. If you're giving them the tools that they need, why not give them the data in those tools, and then you have a much more valuable solution. One of the huge value propositions that HubSpot does offer is having everything unified in one easy to use platform that is also now increasingly more powerful than anything else because of the abilities and the AI that they're building into it.
Yeah, something that I've been working on that I talk about almost at daily now is how HubSpot being easy to use does not mean it's not an enterprise platform. And I think that the perception of HubSpot in the marketplace is, oh, well, it started as a marketing platform. And like for sure it did. And Apple started in a garage. Like there's a starting point for everyone, right? And
Yeah.
I think when we talk about HubSpot today, it's easy to use. That doesn't mean that it's simple. Like you can do really complex stuff with HubSpot and you can run enterprise organizations with thousands of employees on HubSpot. And you have the levers of like permissions and visibility and custom page configuration. Like the reporting's crazy that you can do in HubSpot. And like I have been working on a personal mission to overcome the narrative that HubSpot is not an enterprise level CRM because it absolutely is. And
Right.
that's someone with a lot of Salesforce experience saying that. I am blown away by the stuff that you can do in HubSpot and the amount of time it takes you compared to what it takes you to do in Salesforce. And that doesn't mean that you don't need someone to administer and manage that administrative piece of HubSpot. It just means that that person is going to be able to do so much more in the amount of time they have than they would be able to if they were using a tool like Salesforce or Dynamics or a more legacy CRM, because
Right.
HubSpot has removed friction for the end user and the admin. And just because it's easy doesn't mean it's not enterprise.
Yeah, which of course you talked earlier about the total opportunity cost, and I think that's
Mhm.
another big part that we have conversations weekly about. Someone is buying a shiny object, in this case a CRM. They're just looking at the price of the CRM to start. They're not thinking about what the cost is to maintain and optimize that CRM over time, or the value of it, right? All these types of investments should be seen as capital investments, and a capital investment doesn't have to be a one-off purchase like a truck or a
Mhm.
machine that sits in the corner, even if it's used 24 hours a day. But the CRM should really be seen as the same thing. It's a capital investment, but in order for it to continuously work harder for you as its ability improves and as your processes change and as you get more customers and as just technology and the world evolves, you want to make sure that capital asset to maintain its value and generate true business value.
Yes, and something that I've seen people leave out in this total cost of ownership equation is the license conversation. So this is something I've been working on recently is a license to Sales Hub is not the same as like a platform license in Salesforce because Sales Hub gets you access to HubSpot CRM, but it also gets you a meetings link, it gets you document tracking, it gets you sequenced email scheduling, it gets you deal pipeline management, it gets you forecasting, it gets you reporting and dashboard reporting, like all of these tools. And that's not what you get with a Salesforce platform license. You get access to the CRM.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes it comes down to in these sales conversations where you're saying, okay, well, like let's look at like seat, like pricing side by side. It's like, well, we're missing the forest for the trees here because like one, a sales hub seat is not equal to one seat, a different platform. It's equal to your CRM, your meeting scheduler, your calling tool, your forecasting tool. All of that is a sales hub seat. But more so than that, like you said, it's the implementation, it's the ongoing cost, it's the training. And if you get a tool where you're able to build so much customization on it that it doesn't look like an out of the box version of that tool anymore, it's
Mhm.
very challenging to maintain all of your training and enablement internally. Whereas with HubSpot, the enablement you get from your agency day one is going to live on, and the enablement resources that are available for free in HubSpot Academy and more live on. And you don't need the development resources on an ongoing basis unless you're maintaining some sort of like complex API integration, which is a totally separate conversation.
Right.
And you can use teams like yours to do that where you don't have to have that in house.
Right.
But the TCO is not just that license cost up front or that implementation fee. It's the ongoing headcount, it's the ongoing supplemental licenses needed to get all the features you need. And it's such a bigger conversation than we often come down to. And I think that a lot of people miss that on the market is what can we replace? What can we consolidate? How can
Yes.
we pare down, and also how can we streamline the resources we pay to use? So it's not that we don't have these resources, but how do we optimize their time? Because I think everyone would prefer to be doing something that matters more so than spending their time like in heavy admin tasks. And I think that HubSpot admins are given so much more time to be creative and optimize and grow their business because they're not bogged down with just like point and click tasks that feel very arduous.
Right. So we're heading into wrapping up 2025 here, and 2026 is setting up to be a real roller coaster for so many businesses. And again, it's all about mindset, right? So you can choose to see the roller coasters as a super exciting ride, or you can be afraid. But I think the bottom line is that a lot of business leadership teams currently is that there's a lot of uncertainty, and they're going to be making a lot of tough decisions as they head into the new year. What is a principle or a mantra that you lean into during tough times or having to make hard decisions?
I think it goes back to the golden rule. Treat people the way you want to be treated. I think that all business decisions come back to people and how it's going to impact people, whether we're growing, whether we're declining, we have to do layoffs, we have to hire more. I think it's really important as we go into this strategic planning period to think about how it's going to impact your workforce, because at the end of the day, the most valuable thing you have are the people that work for you. Think about how hiring is going to impact them. Think about how not hiring is going to impact them. Think about the technologies you're bringing on. And really, if we want to look at what is the cost of no change a year from now and what is the cost of change a year from now. And if you zoom past the pains that might come from migrating a tool or hiring a new team or changing a job description for a team, like think about where you're gaining, what you're gaining or losing in a year by those decisions, and think about the overall morale of your company, the overall position of you in the market compared to others in a few ways. So yeah, thinking about it a year from now and thinking about how it's impacting people negatively or positively.
Mm.
Like I said before, I have always tried to be people first in my decisions. It's a legacy my grandfather started and I try to carry on. And I always look for that impact a year from now when it comes to the people around me.
Yeah, that's really good advice. It actually reminds me of again, one of my sort of high level takeaways from the recent inbound. So you had 1,000 people there who are arguably among the most ambitious and innovative people on the planet. But when I was sort of unpacking everything the week after, what I realized is to be innovative, you also have to be very open and good at change, right? Because you cannot innovate without change. So I think that's really good advice, because I think the question you're posing is where are we going to be, or where do we want to be a year from now? What needs to change during that time, and how do we make sure we help our people navigate that change together?
And things are going to change with or without you. So you should get on board to change. I think in today's world, whenever we're change resistant, like it's going to change with or without you being on board. So do you want it to change for the better or for the worse? And what do you want your part of that to get to be?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's at least for us at Dynamico, but I think a lot of folks in the HubSpot partner or in the ecosystem per se, that's one thing we all share in common is we all want to lead the change. We all want to be part of the change. We want to make that change happen together, right? Lauren, so To wrap up, what are you most excited about as we wrap up 2025 and head into 2026?
My son's first birthday is next month. I'm really
Ooh,
excited about that.
wow, that
I'm
is a
also
year already.
really excited about the future of enterprise at HubSpot. Like, is like corny as that might sound, I was working on the HubSpot pre-sales team. I have seen HubSpot grow from having to code your own landing pages to where we're at today. And I'm constantly blown away by the growth of this platform. I've built my career on it, and I'm really excited to expose more and more upmarket customers to HubSpot because there's so much happening that's cool here, and I am excited that I am positioned in the market to be able to talk about it all the time and get paid for it. It feels like a dream. So
Yeah,
I'm excited to keep having this conversation more and more over the next year.
that's awesome. That's very cool. For the folks listening, when you talk about enterprise and the upmarket from a HubSpot perspective, what does that mean in company size?
Yeah. I don't know if I can share the exact specifics of that, but I would say probably, I don't know, 1,000 or more users in your instance. Like that's really the target audience I'm looking at is
Okay.
like when your frontline GTM team sales marketing service consists of 1,000 or more people. That's not a HubSpot definition. That's me. So that's really what I'm looking at is these large companies. Like we're bringing on customers that have 1,500 plus users. And whenever you talk about HubSpot not being enterprise, I don't know how you could say that with that type of background, but people just don't know. There's a
Yeah.
lot of really big businesses running on HubSpot now. And I'm excited to just keep increasing that number because really, I think that our economy needs it. And I think our workforce needs it right now too.
Yeah. Really, really well said. And the reason I asked you is because depending on where people are coming from, enterprise means
Yeah.
different things to different people. So we often refer to it as the mid market, but
Hmm.
even that sometimes we need to explain, which is up to 2,000 employees or users. And really, HubSpot is a perfect fit in that space. But to your point, we'll increasingly go beyond that point. Yeah.
For sure.
Lauren, thanks again so much for joining me today. It was so cool to catch up.
Thanks for having me. Loved it.
Cool.